The Darkness Within, a Harry Potter sequel. Chapter 5. The Resurrection Stone was hidden within the deepest recesses of the Ministry of Magic building. It never stayed in one place for long, and its disguising box was regularly altered. Being one of the most powerful magical objects in existence, it was immune to most spells. It could not be summoned, charmed, or manipulated in any simple way. Voldemort had, of course, placed a powerful curse on it, but he had been an unusually powerful wizard. Very few people knew where the stone was at any one time, and that ensured that in 19 years, no witch or wizard had come close to retrieving it, though many had tried. However, this time was different. Teddy had the Elder Wand, and as a metamorphagus, a rare natural ability, he was able to change appearance at will. The possibility that he could sneak into the Ministry unnoticed was very real. Harry and Hermione swept through the Ministry building, their statuses as Department Head and Minister for Magic ensuring that no one stopped them when they were clearly in a hurry. Along the way, Harry conjured a paper aeroplane, etched a note into it with his wand, and sent it flying off. The message was simple: gather the auras and find me. HP. Harry had sent the note to his assistant, Barnabas Pruitt. He was a cousin of the Weasleys, and not the brightest, but his determination to prove himself useful made him an asset in times like these. Harry trusted him completely. As Harry and Hermione entered an elevator, Barnabas and two auras stepped in after him. Barnabas was gasping for breath. "Mr. Potter," he wheezed. "Minister, what's—" "Not here, Barnabas," said Harry. He nodded stiffly to the auras. They had guessed what this was about. "Department of Magical Law Enforcement," Hermione said. The elevator, after a second's pause, whizzed sideways, backwards, and finally, down. "Department of Magical Law Enforcement," said the smooth female voice of the elevator. "Please step out for Aura Office, Improper Use of Magic Office, and Wizengamot." The voice raised itself to shout after them as they sprang from the elevator in a group. The collective sprinted down the corridor towards the courtrooms, Harry and Hermione in the lead. On the way, more auras appeared from various doors and joined the group, until there were more than a dozen of them. They burst through the entrance to Courtroom 9. Harry had not entered this room since the last Death Eater trials, years ago, but he knew exactly where the stone was hidden. "Spread out," he yelled. "Form a perimeter." The auras did as commanded, taking various places among the rows of seats. Hermione sidled up to Harry and muttered to him, "What's our play? We're just going to stand here and wait for him?" "This is where he's coming. I know it," Harry replied. "If we wait here, he'll come to us, and we'll have him trapped." Hermione nodded, but added, "We can't stay here forever, Harry. These people have other jobs to do." "We'll put them on shifts. Have this room guarded, 24/7. "Like we always should have," Hermione said. "I told you, guarding it would attract attention to it," Harry replied. "No one would know to look here unless we gave them the direction." One by one, he met the eyes of the auras in the room, Barnabas, and finally Hermione. He was about to reveal the exact location of the Resurrection Stone. The trap was set. "Eyes up," he whispered to Hermione, as he lifted the top of the lectern which overlooked the room. Inside the hollowed-out centre was a plain black box. He placed the box on top of the lectern and tapped it with his wand. The box evaporated, leaving behind a bright pink Muggle piggy bank, which was, literally, a china pig. Harry reached into his pocket and pulled out a small hammer. The piggy bank was protected by a clever charm, which meant that no magic could affect it. This would not deter a would-be thief for long, but the time they wasted trying to blast the object open would mean more time for the auras to catch up with them. Harry positioned the pig on the lectern and lined the hammer up exactly with its nose. Another charm meant that the item could only be broken by hitting it in exactly the right place. Anywhere else and the force would rebound on the attempting breaker. Harry raised the hammer and had one last look around the room. The auras were watching the door closely. There was only one way in or out, and they were primed for an attack. Hermione was searching their faces for any suspicious signs. Only one stared at the piggy bank. Barnabas had a hungry look in his eyes. He was fixed on the piggy bank as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Got him," Harry muttered to Hermione. She did not react, but reached for her wand, moving so slowly it was almost imperceptible. Harry brought the hammer down, stopping only centimetres short of the pig. In the same instant, he raised his wand and brought it downward in an arc, aiming for Barnabas. He flew back several metres and landed hard, sliding across the stone floor. Hermione swished her wand towards him, emitting a purple light, an anti-apparition jinx. Harry nodded to Hermione. He leapt off the bench and strode towards Barnabas, who was clearly Teddy in disguise. "Keep watch on the door," Harry said to the Aurors. "He may not be alone. Norman, Samuel, see if you can find the real Barnabas. If he's hurt, take him to St. Mungo's." The two Aurors rushed off. Their trap had worked. Harry had guessed Teddy might try to sneak into the ministry in disguise, so he had made it easy for him. He knelt down next to the unconscious figure of Barnabas and paused. Hermione joined him. "What is it, Harry?" she said, noticing his confusion. "Why hasn't he changed?" Harry asked. "I thought when Metamorphogai were knocked unconscious, they—" He stopped, noticing movement out the corner of his eye. One of the Aurors, Tompkins, had pulled out his wand and was striding a little too quickly towards them. He slashed his wand in their direction, and Harry was suddenly pinned to the floor. Harry had never seen such a spell. He could not move a muscle, but it was not the bodybind spell. Rather, it was as if a giant was stepping on his back, the force crushing him downwards. He struggled to breathe. Out the corner of his eye he saw Hermione experiencing the same. From the grunts and withered groans, he assumed everyone in the room was under the effects of the hex. "Don't follow me, Harry," said a voice. It was Teddy. "I don't want to hurt anyone. Just let me do this." Ted, Harry tried to say. He could not see Teddy, but he heard the piggy bank smash. A second later, Teddy cried out, and Harry was freed from the effects of the crushing bind. He sucked in a lungful of air and pushed himself to his feet. Still gasping, he turned to survey the situation. Norman and Samuel had re-entered the courtroom and had their wands pointed at Teddy. He was lying on the ground. He had been distracted by the sight of the resurrection stone, which was clasped in his hand when the Aurors returned. He had been disarmed, the elder wand lying several feet from him. As one, everyone in the room rushed towards him. Before they could reach him, however, he had pulled another wand from his pocket and muttered, "Accio." The elder wand shot towards him. He grabbed it out of the air, pocketed the stone, then stood facing the group with a wand in each hand. Several of the Aurors threw anti-apparition jinxes at him. He swept the two wands around his head, and the jinxes passed harmlessly to the side. The Aurors did not give up, continuing to cast spells at him so he would not have time to disapparate. "Teddy," Harry yelled over the cracks and claps of sound. "Listen to me. You've got to stop this. Your parents wouldn't want—" Harry's breath was knocked out of him as Teddy's spell hit him in the chest. He dropped to a knee. Hermione stepped forward, blocking a curse aimed at her with a hasty shield charm. "Your parents would be ashamed," she cried at Teddy, continuing to move towards him as she deflected his attacks. "We knew them, Teddy. This is not block what they dodge would want." She span her wrist around with the last word, and Teddy's regular wand was knocked from his grip. It flew through the air, landing in Hermione's free hand. Teddy expressed surprise for a moment, then pointed the elder wand at the ceiling. Cracks appeared in the stone, and within seconds, large pieces of rock began raining down onto them. Harry, Hermione, and the Aurors held their wands over their heads, shielding themselves from the debris. "We don't know what they would want," Teddy yelled over the noise. He stepped forward, turned, and vanished. "Barnabas was under the Imperious curse," said Harry, shaking his head. "We should have checked everyone. We were careless." "It was a good plan," said Ginny, who had joined them at the ministry. "Not good enough," Harry replied. "We know what the problem is, why he keeps evading us." Harry avoided his wife's eyes. They were sitting in his office, Hermione, Ginny, and Ron in front of the desk, Harry behind it. "What?" said Ginny, leaning forward in her chair. Harry planted his fingertips on the oak surface. "We're still playing by the rules. We're treating Teddy as a lost friend, and he is, but we won't catch him unless we start behaving like we're after a criminal, someone capable of terrible things." He locked eyes with his wife. He knew she didn't like what he was saying, but she knew he was right. Finally, she nodded. Harry continued, "I'll make the announcement. Teddy Lupin is a fugitive and must be caught, by any means necessary." Ron coughed. "Harry, I don't think—" "He could have killed a lot of people today, Ron," Harry interrupted. "Teddy is family, but it's clear now he won't listen to reason. I don't need to remind you of what might happen if Voldemort starts working through him." Ron slammed his hand on the desk. "I know, Harry, but didn't you say once how important it is to not become like your enemy? We're not becoming like anything. We're doing what we have to protect the people." Ron snarled. "So, what, for the greater good? Is that it, Grindelwald?" It was Harry's turn to slam the desk. He stood up, kicking his chair back. "This is why you couldn't cut it as an aura. The joke shop has made you soft, Ron. We'll do what we have to." Harry glanced at his wife. Her glossy red hair, her shining eyes, both reflected the light of the sunset coming in from the window. He softened and took a deep breath. "I'm sorry I said that, Ron. You're right, of course you are. But the peace we all worked so hard for, it's worth a life. Even Teddy's." Ron shuffled his chair back, stood up, and put on his jacket. "I'm not taking part in this anymore. I don't like how you sound right now, Harry." He turned to Hermione. "I'll see you at home." Without another word, he left the office. Hermione sighed. "I'll talk to him." "No," said Harry, taking a seat again. "It's fine. He's forgotten, and I don't blame him. We'd all like to forget." He lowered his head. Ginny leaned over the desk and grabbed his hand, squeezing it. Harry squeezed back and continued. "But what Ron needs to accept is, the world didn't magically get better when he stopped being an aura. The fight goes on." He sat back wearily. "It always goes on." Hermione clenched her teeth. "Careful, Harry. You know he doesn't think that. He's suffered as much as the rest of us." Ginny cleared her throat. "What are we going to tell people happened here?" Hermione and Harry stared at each other. As minister, Hermione had the authority. She spoke first. "We don't have to mention the Elder Wand. We don't want to create a panic, but we will tell people the truth. The Ministry was attacked by someone on the run, and they are at large." Harry nodded. Ginny faced Harry. "And what will you do?" Harry raised himself up and walked to the window, staring out over London. "I have my own Hallow card to play." Big Ben chimed, lifting Harry from his thoughts. "Sorry to kick you out, but I have a meeting with the Auras now. I'll see you both later." Hermione and Ginny quietly left the room while Harry continued to stare out the window. When they were gone, he walked over to his desk and picked up a framed photograph. It was taken during Harry's 5th year at Hogwarts, when the Order had gathered at their headquarters in Grimmauld Place for Christmas. He focused first on Sirius, who had his hands on the pictured Harry's shoulders and was beaming. Harry looked at his younger self. Despite all the anguish of those times, he had found a way to enjoy the moment, to be happy. He scanned each face in the picture and lastly turned to Remus and Tonks. They had not yet established themselves as a couple at this point, but staring at them in the photo, Harry didn't know how he could have missed their connection. Their hands were gently brushing against each other, and every few seconds they turned inwards and their eyes met. "I'm sorry," said Harry. "I have no choice. You would understand, right?" But Harry's chest ached briefly in response to his own question. He knew they wouldn't.